Fine, no.
Okay. Welcome back to the From the Fabricator podcast. I'm your host, Max Perlstein. Thank you so much for joining me on this journey. Appreciate it. This episode is a special one. This is episode number 50. This started back in January of 2021. We've had a few extra episodes along the way, and this is number 50, and it's a special one with some very special guests coming up in a moment. Huge thanks out to my friends at FHC. They are sponsoring this podcast, and you can save big on glass and glazing essentials. This month of June, FHC customers can save up to 25% on the most popular abrasive belts, sanding discs, and glass cleaners. Now's the time to stock up on these glazier essentials to keep your glass edges and optics clean and clear for your customers. All products are in stock, ready to ship, or pick up today. Visit fhc-usa.com. That's fhc-usa.com. You now have a choice. And thank you for making the choice of listening or watching this podcast, and it will be worth your time because I have Kyle Beyer and David Argus. These guys have been talking about mental health awareness, addiction, recovery, some heavy, important subjects. Cal is from the SAFE Project. You'll hear about that. Dave is from Karas & Karas, one of the leading glass players in our industry. And very interesting story. Lots to learn, lots to take in. And tremendous people. If you saw Cal at Glass Build last year, you know. If you saw these guys at BEC, you know, and they add a lot more to the conversation. And I learned a lot along the way, and I think you will too. So special edition, number 50, just Cal and Dave today. And I appreciate you checking this out, and I'll be on the other side to wrap it up. Until then, here we go. Here's Cal, here's Dave. Okay. Special edition of this podcast. As I mentioned earlier in my open, this is the 50th From the Fabricator podcast, started in 2021. And I'm honored because I wanted to do something special for this. And I'm honored to have Kyle Beyer, David Argus. Cal is the Senior Director of Safe Workplaces, Safe Projects, Stop the Addiction and Fatality Epidemic. Find them online at safeproject.us. David Argus is the Director of Operations at Karas & Karas Glass, one of the great glass companies, glaziers, fabricators in the United States. And these guys, if you saw them at Glass Build and BEC, you know what they're going to talk about. If you didn't see them, just sit tight. It's important stuff. Guys, thank you so much for joining me on the podcast.
Thanks for having us today, Max. It's always great to be with Dave Argus.
I could say that about both of you guys. I was so blown away by, I only got to see a bit of you at Glass Build. I saw all of you at BEC, and we're going to talk about that stuff in a moment. But let's just, I always start off with kind of the whole get to know you guys sort of thing on every podcast I do. So Cal, I'll start with you. A little bit about your past, where you grew up, and then eventually how you got into doing what you're doing now.
Yeah, Max, thank you very much. I grew up in Madison, Wisconsin.
Okay.
Go Badgers. I have been a public safety advocate my whole career, and I did spend 10 years working in healthcare through high school and college, and then 10 years working with public safety professionals. In 1996, I moved to the construction industry, and I had this feeling that all that background in healthcare and in public safety would be built helping people. I wasn't sure exactly what I would be doing, but for the last 15 to 18 years, I've been working on behavioral health in the workplace in a non-clinical way as a risk and safety and wellness professional. And along the way, I bumped into Dave Argus and many other great humans doing the same type of work. And Dave, I just am grateful to know you and to be your friend and collaborator.
And you guys, and as we go on, you'll see the connection that you have and just the way you work off of each other. I totally enjoy, and hopefully it comes through on the podcast because it comes through in person really well. David Argus, tell me about yourself. Obviously, how you got into this business, because I think your family's all in the business too. Talk to me about where you grew up and how you got into the glass world.
Yeah, well, I grew up in the Boston area. Karas & Karas, who I work for, obviously, it's our 100th year this year, so they've been around a lot longer than I have. but I just got into construction as a young man. It ended up by chance at Karras and Karras Glass 30 some odd years ago. I
Okay.
don't even see. I'm getting to that age where I'd have to go look how many years I've been here, but it's 34, 35 years, and it just fit. I just really lucked out. It just fit. I ended up really enjoying the work, enjoying the people that I work with. And that was it. I just stuck in the glass business, and then I got locked in, and that's where I'm at now. I'll end up dying here. This is it.
Well, that's a glass industry for you. Keep going. Sorry.
Yeah. The world of addiction I got into through a family member.
Okay.
So that's a little more complicated of a story, but being in the glass business just kind of evolved.
Gotcha. Now, and you know, the podcast killer question is never ask a question you may not know the answer to. Is Jay Argus a relative of yours?
Jay is my older brother.
Okay, and he's at Karras and Karras.
Much older brother.
Much older brother. So he's like the same age as Leo Karras was, right? Is that what you're telling me?
Not quite, but no, he's older, and we've worked together forever.
Gotcha.
Work together, whereas I do what he says.
Gotcha. Yeah, very cool. I was curious where that connection came in, and obviously you were at Karras and Karras when Leo was still with us.
Yes.
One of the legends of the industry, and now Leo's son Joey runs the business day to day. So at Karras and Karras. So
well, Joey runs part of the business, and my brother runs the other part.
Right.
Jay has 2 sons in the business, and I have 1 son in the business. So hopefully it keeps going.
It will. Well, thank you for going down that rabbit hole with me there, and so and understanding where I was trying to go. And Karras and Karras Glass, David Argus, and I've got Cal Beyer, and so Cal, before you jumped on, I was asking Dave, you know, how you guys met. So I'm going to ask you, how did you end up meeting Dave Argus and finding the glass industry? I mean, here you are, big time, professional in the health and safety side of the world. How did you end up connecting with Dave?
I was introduced to Dave by Sean Neely and Tom Gunning. Sean Neely is a vice president with the Ironworkers Union, and Tom Gunning is the executive director for the Building Trades Employers Association in Boston. And those 2 gentlemen did a webinar with the ironworkers back in 2020, if I recall correctly. And I was going to be doing a webinar later that year on suicide prevention. They did one that talked about recovery and Recovery Week. And I wanted, as an ally, to reach out to them to say, thank you, great job. Wow, that's amazing. Dave happened to be a presenter that day as well. And they connected me with Dave because at the end, Dave had work to go do, and he wasn't able to sit around for the niceties in the chat. So Dave and I then connected, and boy, I loved his humor, his edginess. I found him to be a remarkable human because he was doing things that no one else had really contemplated, at least not being vocal about. And that was hiring people in recovery, giving them a second or a next chance, putting them to work in a meaningful opportunity to build a career and to build a future. And they both had talked about Dave, and Dave will be self-deprecating at times. He can be edgy and take pot shots at anybody, but bottom line, truly one of the most impactful professionals I've seen in how he reaches out to people with recovery, break down the stigma, and build them a pathway toward that future. And I marveled at Dave because he was open, he was honest. I'm from the Midwest. I live now in Seattle, 3 hours of time zone, a lot of miles between us. But Dave likes to dish it out. And then I got a little bit edgy back with Dave, and he liked it when I got playful and we bantered. And but between the banter, there was a lot of heart. And I felt like if I get a chance to team teach with this guy, I'm going to seize the opportunity. And we've had multiple opportunities to do so.
No doubt, no doubt. And so let's talk about that, because I know that we have subjects of, you guys talked to Glass Build and BEC and the addiction epidemic and so many things. But what, Cal and Dave, I'll let you both kind of throw in there, because I know you guys work real well together. What's the main messaging that you have been focused on, especially for the glass industry, and for this audience? What are they, people that are listening right now? What do you want to tell them? And then we'll kind of get into the depths of it all.
Max, you asked me a question about how I got involved with the
Right,
glass industry. It was through Melanie Detmer.
right,
Melanie has had a passion around mental health and suicide prevention. And Melanie wanted this message to be one of hope, help, healing, and recovery.
right.
So, Dave, that would be the pathway that we used. And then when they invited me after Glass Build America in 2023 to come to the building enclosure conference,
Hmm.
I'm like, I've got the perfect co-presenter. If you can't bring both, bring him, but he's going to want to do this with me.
Yeah.
And together, that's how we ended up talking about hope, help, healing, and recovery.
And it was a great piece. And so, Dave, I guess backing up, how did you get into the whole angle of helping people in recovery and putting them to work and giving them a chance, and being as compassionate as you are? I mean, that comes, the compassion comes from within. And you mentioned you had a family member, but what was the impetus to look at this? Because a lot of companies just run scared from something like this.
I guess it, if I guess it was, I was in a lot of trauma myself. Um, I don't know if you have children, Max, but I
I
mean,
do.
pain is pain. We can deal with it, right? But when you see a kid in pain, you see a kid suffering, it's a whole different ballgame.
Yes.
And I, I, at the time knew a lot of people in the construction business. I was suffering, and I had no idea what to do. And I couldn't believe in this world. We're going to the moon, we're going everywhere, all the technologies we have. And I had no idea what to do. I had no idea who to contact. It was just, I was in like, it was like someone put me on a planet that I didn't speak the language. So I was lost, and I thought, once I started to get things in perspective, I thought, I don't want the next person, if I could do something to help someone not be lost like I was, then I'd like to do it.
Right.
It was just an idea bouncing around my head. And then one time as Cal mentioned, Sean Neely, the vice president of the Ironworkers, introduced us, and him and I used to get in quite a few arguments. I'm representing a company, he's representing his union brothers,
Sure.
and sometimes our interests didn't exactly align.
Sure.
He's a fiery little guy, I'm a fiery little guy, and we became not enemies, but certainly not friends. We both, if he was going to something, I knew I'd have to go to put my side of it, because he'd be. So one day after an argument, I didn't even know he knew I had a son. He looked at me. Where I get kind of emotional.
Understood.
And I think he said something like, "Well, fuck you, Dave. But just so you know, I'll be praying for your son tonight." And it kind of floored me. So I kind of I've loved the guy ever since. And we're very good friends now. But I said, you know what? A guy like that, he knows what's going on. So I talked to him we talked to other people in Boston that kind of run the building trades,
Mhm.
and we got Modern Assistants along with us, who is our employee assistance program manager. And we started a little foundation where we could bring people in that, as I said, wanted to get sober as bad as they want to breathe, and give them a chance to start a new life.
Right.
Give them not just a sober job, but possibly a career, possibly the last job they ever have.
Right.
And then that kind of, then they started, we started to get a few guys in, and at the beginning, I think it was two gentlemen that came in, young, 21, 22, and it just became more than giving them a job. It became checking up on them. It became,
Right.
geez, if this guy's talking to you, don't look at the ground, look in his eyes. It became teaching them that no one's more important than them, and they're not more important than anyone else. A typical thing that I always say, but they don't know that. People in recovery don't know that. Well, people in early recovery don't know that. So we just tried to help them with love. You know what? I can explain it 15 different ways, but in reality, we just love them.
Right.
And that's the key. That's the key to almost anything, because addiction is that when you're in the throes of addiction, you have broken off every relationship you have. Anything meaningful, you lose. So we wanted to implant new love, new connections, new neurological pathways, the whole 9 yards. And it just mushroomed into something a lot more than we ever thought.
Right.
And it has since changed again and again. It constantly evolves.
It's
That's
probably worth.
Yeah.
how I met Cal. And
Yeah.
then when Cal, as he said, was talking about suicide prevention, and then I start thinking about that when I go home at night, and I'm like, oh my God, that is unbelievable. That is so hard. How does he do that? And I'm, but it's just about, it seems like regardless of what the problem is, it just comes down to loving the person next to you. I mean, that's it. I mean, that's going to solve so many problems. It's extremely simple. And then you learn that simple and easy are very different, because it's extremely hard, but it's worth it.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. And Cal, jump on in there. Yeah, I know you had some thoughts.
Yeah, a little bit of background. Sean Neely describes himself as a person in long-term recovery.
Okay.
And Sean was one of the first people that we're aware of that was bringing a 12-step program to a labor hall. So he was focused on helping other people in recovery. So when Dave described him being a zealot for his people, it was Sean being this advocate, much like Dave is. And I think it's powerful to see out of these alternate interests, company versus labor union, how this became a joint labor management initiative. And Tom Gunning, as an association, was one of those mediating factors. So you had a contractor with a strong personality, labor union with a strong personality,
Yeah.
maybe none more so than the iron workers. And then Tom Gunning, as an association, together they came together, got the building trades group on board. And Tom Gunning will identify as a person in long-term recovery as well. So you had these people with interests, Dave from that family perspective, Sean himself, and for his people, Tom Gunning himself, representing all the employers, and together this whole mass of the Massachusetts Building Trades Council. And in 2019, they started something called Recovery Week, Building Trades Recovery Week. And even during the pandemic, it continued. And so I just wanted to share how Sean also introduced me to Tom Gunning when I had that opportunity. And now, like the four of us and another person in the Ironworkers, Michael Doucette, there's five that form this nucleus to just work together, to collaborate, to connect each of us to other people when there needed to be light shined on this topic. And that has been such an important and powerful force for good in helping educate people in every one of these sectors, whether it's an association, a labor union, or a contractor. And even if they're non-union, to just understand what's happening is another powerful reflection. And we found that glass industry through NGA embraced how important this topic was. They recognized there's too much loss. We're losing human potential. We're losing family members. We're losing coworkers. We're losing recruits to this industry, apprentices, but we're even losing journey level workers or experienced workers, whether you're union or non-union. So I think there's been this uniting of forces for that greater good.
Yeah, no, there's no doubt, and it's interesting because last month I had on a couple of gentlemen from the IUPAT, which is a different from the Ironworker Union, and they're very focused on mental health initiatives and getting rid of that stigma that exists. That guys and gals on job sites, mostly guys, don't feel like they could talk and bring up that they may have an issue along the way, and so it's good we're all kind of rowing in the right direction. And so Cal, that kind of brings me to you with the SAFE project. What exactly is that? You can find it online, safeproject.us. But talk about what that is and how you're involved, and then how that can be a part of our world right now.
Max, SAFE Project has been a great partner for the 3.5 years prior to me joining their staff. I met their CEO when I was trying to bring more awareness and attention and strategy around substance use disorder, and especially around how do we teach people recovery for addiction treatment. So what I liked about SAFE Project started in 2017. They were identifying how to close gaps and amplify the best practices being used by other organizations. So avoid or reduce redundancy and stand in the gap, make a tangible difference in impacting addiction. What I really appreciated about them is they were almost a vertically integrated nonprofit. They had a portfolio for veterans and caregivers, one for communities that also included K through 12 schools, one for college campuses, and then one for the workplaces. So I'm the senior director for Safe Workplaces, but there's a senior director in each of those portfolios. And together we work to identify synergy and collaboration to break down the barriers around stigma for substance use disorder. But it's a very comprehensive approach. It's looking at system change. There is no easy button. To Dave's point, this is hard work and it takes concerted effort. And the collaboration that I see at Safe Project has been very impactful. It's how we break down barriers. So a year ago, last November of 2023, I got to attend a Collegiate Recovery Leadership Academy. I was a guest. I was going to be an observer. I ended up being a little bit more of an active participant. 50 students from 42 different college campuses. And I said, I need to not just be a partner with this organization, I've got to become part of this organization. That changed my perspective. I'm like, I've got to find like-minded people that are focused on systemic change. So that's how I ended up at Safe Project. And it's been a great fit, a great organization. And they've allowed me to continue doing things that are impactful, like the National Glass Association.
It's tremendous, and it's tremendous to have you around. And both of you said so many different takeaways, but the one you just said, Kyle, about the systemic change. I don't think we can move the needle until more and more people understand that it has to change systematically. Companies and cultures and so on. How do we get some of that messaging across?
Yes, this messaging is so important. We use a campaign called the No Shame Pledge, and it's an opportunity for people to learn about the basics of addiction, that this is a complex, treatable disease, that it has chronic health conditions, but that it is preventable and it is treatable. So that's a really important element. The second part then is meeting people where they are at and seeing what level of support they need. So in the workplaces, it's letting people know that we need to break down barriers that keep people from seeking help beyond stigma. So one approach I'm taking is, how do we get more human resources leaders and employee benefit leaders, both at unions and employers, to find solutions to share more information about addiction treatment and recovery? And then how do we roadmap for individuals who need help pathways toward recovery? We do have employee benefits. Frequently, they're underutilized because people are afraid to come
Yeah.
forward and ask for help. And we've got to get beyond employee assistance programs. Those have been a great program. Dave mentioned a great one, Modern Assistance, what they've done to personalize and humanize addiction care is a big step in the right direction. But we need more employers to say, how do we help get people help for themselves, for their workers, and for the families of both?
And so if I'm an employer on here, I can go to safeproject.us and get some of that road mapping, I assume?
Yeah, we will have tools like that No Shame Pledge. We'll have a No Shame education program. We have other tools that are available on our website. A big part of what we're doing today, because of the overdose crisis, is teaching employers how to embrace naloxone on the job site for opioid overdose reversal.
Right.
So training resources. We've partnered with other groups as well to offer sample policy, some toolbox talks to teach people how to have these conversations on tough topics. We spend a lot of time building partnerships to teach people about leading gateways for new persistent opioid use in workers' comp and employee benefits. So prescriptions for on and off the job injuries, and then surgical, medical, and dental procedures. And the third is leftover pills from both prescriptions and
Sure.
surgeries.
Sure.
Those
Eh,
are three leading gateways where family members can be impacted by the risk of addiction. So a
Absolutely.
lot of education, Max, a lot of tools teaching people how to break down those barriers.
Max,
Eh,
I mean, the company that Cal works for is a great company, but that doesn't take the onus off the individual companies. The things that he has, companies need to adopt those, not individual employees.
Right.
Employers need to adopt those.
Right. Right. And that's why I was saying, if he had the tools on there, which he says he does, and then that's this way, employers and owners that are listening to this, watching this, can go to safeproject.us, or they can, when they come to Glass Build, see you guys, talk to you guys afterwards. And I mean, Dave, you're in the field, you're in the office, you're in this industry, you're in a hot market in New England. I mean, you mentioned earlier, said it's not easy, obviously, but are you finding, more and more people at least wanting to go in this direction, or amongst your peers in the industry, is it still, slow go on trying to get more and more people to pay attention to this and embrace it?
As far as other employers, Max,
Yeah, as far as other employers, recognizing and being open and trying to create a more welcoming, scenario here, similar to what you have going on.
I, I see more interest,
Okay.
but I see more interest from 1,000 feet away.
Okay.
People often ask me, I want to make an impact. How do I do it? And they don't, they generally don't like my answer. Where do I donate? What do I do? It's not that,
Right.
right?
Right.
It's not, it's executing, it's going and doing something. It's going and talking to someone. You talk to them, now it's not an addict, it's a person, right?
Right.
You humanize it. You talk to them, they're people, right? Well, what are they? People need to stop asking, how come they can't stop? Why can't they stop? Don't ask that question. Ask,
Yeah.
why did they stop?
Yeah.
Why did they stop? Because that's the trauma early on that created the behavior.
Right.
So to fix something, you don't just stop it. You fix what caused it. You go back and you
The
try to
root.
you
The
try
root.
to end what caused
Yeah.
it. And everyone that works for me, none of us have a degree in anything to do with um recovery. We don't. We just know it from treating people kind,
Yeah.
listening to. That's why I mean, insurance companies do not like what I do, Max. There's people that don't like it. I'm taking an industry. Cal knows all the stats. What are we, Cal? Second to like fishermen or miners or something like that. And I'm bringing people that have nothing to do with construction, but are addicts, and I'm bringing them into construction.
Yeah.
So this is again a different look. And insurance companies don't necessarily enjoy that.
Do you get and have you gotten pushback from maybe the GC or other contractors on the job saying, I don't trust these guys, that's because you get that stigma too of, somebody judges the book by its cover right away. Do you run into that?
Oh, absolutely. And it's risk analysis type minded people that will say, well, what are you're just asking for trouble. You're just asking for trouble. But again, they're only saying that out of ignorance. They don't understand the disease. They don't understand the people, because what I'm doing is certainly not. Like I tell people, if we can elect an addict to run the country, George Bush, right? Most powerful man in the world at the time, I think we can have a couple of iron workers and carpenters,
Right. 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 You're right. You put it in perspective. And Cal, just to David mentioned the stats. The glass industry, he is saying one of the rougher
Well,
spots compared to
construction
others.
in general.
Yeah. Yeah.
Next, it would be the construction
Okay.
industry.
Okay.
The data has not been defined at a super granular
Gotcha.
level, but last August, data came out from the CDC, and it looked at 20 major industries and then separately occupations. So construction and extraction, which would be mining, oil and gas, and it would include things like aggregates, which is part of construction. They had the highest rate of overdose loss among all industries. And at the occupational level, it was construction at number one. So we know in the construction industry, 56 people per workers per 100,000 die by suicide. Of overdose within construction, it was 130.9. So a very significant number, and a lot of common factors between the highest ranking industries were those with a lot of musculoskeletal injuries, sprains and strains, those soft tissue injuries that frequently are invisible but take time to heal. And without having paid time off, workers frequently will play through the pain.
Yeah.
Because if they're not working, there's not a paycheck, and they're trying to provide for their families. So we really try to educate people what the risk factors are. And so on that, you look at sprains and strains. We found data when I did an article called Waging a Counterattack Against Opioids in the Workplace and at Home that showed 55% of the time construction workers sought medical help, they received a prescription for opioids. And the dose was 20% stronger, and the duration of the prescription was 20% longer. That put a lot of people at risk. And then 90% of people don't properly and safely dispose of medicine. We squirrel it away for a rainy day.
Yep.
It's
Just
hard
in
for
case.
us,
Right.
with the hours we keep, to seek medical attention. So we squirrel it away. That puts our preteens, teens, young adults, guests in our home at risk when they find those looking for pain relief themselves.
We will get back to Cal and Dave in a moment. Until then, check this out from my friends from FHC.
Hey glazers and fabricators, FHC, the Frameless Hardware Company, is here to support your business. In addition to offering a complete selection of glazing tools and supplies to get the job done right, we design, engineer, and manufacture a comprehensive offering of frameless shower door systems, heavy glass doors, aluminum entrances and storefronts, architectural railings, transaction and display hardware, privately owned and American made. FHC prioritizes you, the customer. You now have a choice. Visit fhc-usa.com.
Kyle Beyer, Senior Director of Safe Workplaces. You can see them online at safeproject.us. David Argus, Director of Operations at Karras & Karras Glass, are my guests. This is from the Fabricator podcast. We're talking mental health, addiction, recovery, support. These two guys both, have been at our events. Cal was at Glassbill. Dave joined him at BEC. And I'm curious, when you both spoke at BEC, you have 800 plus people there, mostly leaders of companies. Did anything surprise you from the reaction of the crowd, the reaction of people coming up to you afterwards? Did anything, that you walked away saying either, whoa, they get it, or no, they don't? I mean, what was your feeling about it? Dave, I'll start with you. What did you feel as a takeaway after BEC?
I was surprised, when you're in the middle of it that day, it was exciting to see that many people there. I mean, I'm the type of guy, I was a little annoyed. Everyone wasn't there and anyone was walking around the hallways.
Right.
But, the next day, Max, I was floored when a guy that I had worked with in this industry for the last 20 years, on and off, a vendor of sorts, came to me and said, geez, I love what you and Cal talked about. I've been struggling pretty much the last 20 years, but I just kind of got sober 6 months ago. I wasn't even going to go in because I didn't know what was going to be said, but I went in and I'm so glad I did. And it just kind of blew me away. It blew me away. I dealt with this guy for 20 years, and even though I'm in the thick of all this, I never thought that he might have a problem. Or, you always say when someone's acting a little bit strange, or when someone treats you maybe like he's an asshole that day, I always think, you know what, I didn't have the morning he had. I don't know what he went through. I don't always do that, right? Like running around at this glass show, I wasn't thinking that. So this kind of floored me and brought me right back to where I think I needed to be. And since then, I've had so many people just shoot me an email saying how much they got out of it. And I mean, every time we ever do this, right? The motto is, if we save one life, it was worth it.
Yeah.
And it's hard, but when you throw hope out there, some people grab it, and it's just so beautiful to see.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'll have a follow-up for you in a second, but I want to get Cal's reaction to, what were your thoughts post these? You were at the last two events, Glassbuild and BEC, and you will be at Glassbuild in Dallas come October, which we're excited to have you guys there.
Let me just interrupt you before.
Please. Yeah, please.
One big thing I did take out of that was,
yes,
wow, I'd be screwed without Cal.
He's good. He's good. I like
funny, Dave.
He's
the
good.
best.
He's good.
I was so grateful to have Dave because he was one of that audience. Yes, I represent construction broadly, but Dave is a building enclosure contractor. And when I referenced Dave to Melanie and Katie and Sarah in the very beginning at NGA, I'm like, I've got the perfect person. I'm sure they were like, who else does Cal want to bring? But when I described Dave, I could see the look in their eyes. And I'm like, and if you can only bring one, bring Dave. Because I knew
go ahead,
that would resonate.
And Cal, before you continue on your thoughts, the one thing about Dave, even people that don't know him, they know Karras & Karras, which is a legendary brand, which brings a lot of heft to it. This isn't some fly by night glass company. This is a legendary brand.
And we sensed that before I even came. So I had this anticipation. We called it straight talk about addiction treatment and recovery. And Dave is going to speak from the heart, and I'm going to speak from my heart and my brain. But I love how Dave speaks just from that heart. He's got a brain about this as well. But Dave said some nuggets that resonated not only with me, but with everyone. So when he threw the gauntlet down to say, hey, you need to think about this. And then, Dave, one of the nuggets that I continue to have people talk to me about, Max, you wrote about it in your Fabricator LinkedIn newsletter as well. But when Dave threw back the answer, when your kid brings home a bad report card, you don't put them up for adoption. You love on them. You sit down with them. You ask them, what's going on? How can we support you? That got Dave, for sure, a partial standing ovation, but everyone clapped. And I'm like, yes, that ding, that bell, that light bulb went off. That was like watching a hockey game and seeing the red lights turn on.
Yeah.
And the big air horn. I'm like, that was worth the price of that whole day. So the second part I wanted to say, Max, the conversations happened in the hallways. They happened in the restroom. They happened wandering to get a cup of coffee. It happened in the elevators. It happened walking down the hall, going to your room at the end of the night, where people would say, wow, gave me a lot to think about today. And Dave, I know you and I both had 15, 20 separate conversations like that. That's where the action was.
And I'm with Dave. There was a lot of people that were in the hallway, and some people did kind of sneak in, but I do think those people in the hallway really missed out because they heard from everybody that was in there that you had to hear this. It was so genuine, it was so intense, it's so important. And that's when I was like, I got to get these guys on the podcast because we need to keep spreading this word. I mean, that's the biggest thing, is to, the more people we can get out. And I think Dave said it, if we could save one person, if we could help one person, it's a big time win. Dave, one of the things that you had said at BEC, which was interesting to me, was you gave a real life example of one of your guys coming in and saying, hey, I had a bad night. I'm in trouble here. And you gave the example and you talked about how you handled it, which I again, you handled it with love and compassion and also, great intelligence. Okay. You had a plan. How often, A, does that happen? And B, how do we pass that sort of compassion on? Because I could see employers getting into the same thing that you're doing, but then struggle when that case comes up, when a guy or a gal falls off the wagon. How do I, and I know this wasn't your first time, but how do you, how do you kind of teach that skill on a little bit?
Well, I think, Max, relapse is a chronic part of the disease, right? I mean, it doesn't always happen, but it most likely will, and most likely more than once. When I look at relapse, I think mentally a relapse happens way before you take a drug or a drink. I think when these guys get clean and sober, I pay attention to what they do. Everyone's got a different path, and I love people are the best classroom there is. You watch them. So, while they're doing great, they're going to their therapist, they're going to their meetings, they're talking with people, and I talk to them, I get a relation. I think they know that I love them, and so they feel comfortable talking to me. So they'll come to me and say, geez, I'm feeling weird lately, what'd you do last week? Well, I didn't do any drugs. I went to a party Friday night. I'm like, Friday? Didn't you normally go to that drop-in meeting at Local 7 on Fridays? Well, yeah, I stopped there a little while ago, but I mean, I went to the party, I didn't drink. So really, what they're doing is they're putting themselves in a dangerous position.
Right.
They're not going over the edge, but it's progression, right? Like they might not the next time or the next time, but eventually, they're going to go over the edge, and that's like the waterfall of relapse. And if you can get to them before they actually do and say, hey, you know, you're heading this way. Why don't you go back to those 6 things you were doing when you first got out? Sometimes, Max, they'll listen, and sometimes you just got to let it go.
Right.
You let it happen. And that's part of the heartbreak, you know, where that people die. A lot of people, then they relapse.
Yeah.
Then we get them help if they want help. And then they're back. And you know what? But they're back better than before they relapsed. Because now we use that as even when you don't fully take the drug, when you have a mental type relapse, it's in safety. I think you'd call it a near miss, right? We try to learn every time it happens, or at least talk about it. Because I don't know shit about any of this. I'm extremely curious, but I have no answers. And those are the people I like to hang around with. The people that have all the answers that really just are doing it for themselves, I think.
Yeah.
So we just all get together and talk. We just talk. It's just like a community.
No, that's that's great, and it is interesting that trying to catch it from the triggers, you know, the things that might push them further into it before they actually relapse, you know, is pretty interesting too, because I hadn't thought of it that way. You know, Cal, you know, your advice for, you know, companies, you know, to you know, continue to be proactive. I mean, I assume that's again stuff that Safe Project does, but your thoughts on this whole situation?
Max, this is such an important topic. In the workplace, we've had this over reliance on drug-free workplace policies and drug testing protocols, but not necessarily teaching people about the human and financial consequences of substance use, misuse, or even substance use disorder. We haven't had the curiosity that Dave describes to teach people about recovery and multiple paths of recovery. So in a lot of the workplace workshops I do, or all employee meetings or association events, I'm always trying to build in interactive anonymous polling. And it's still very small percent of employers that are feeling comfortable to share resources with employees and families. We rely on a substance abuse professional after a failed drug test. We rely on an EAP for someone to have to make a telephone call. We're not using these one-on-one check-ins. How are you doing? Are you okay? Do you need support? We've been keeping a separation, and what we need to really bolster our efforts is sharing information about 12-step and non-12-step recovery programs. We need to understand what services we offer in our employee benefit programs for behavioral health, and then educate people before the fact, not wait for a crisis.
Right.
Do more lunch and learns, have more resources on job sites, on billboards, on QR codes in bathrooms and break rooms, to just let people know that help is available. I think.
Go ahead. Go ahead.
No, please.
Well, it does. It seems way reactive. Everything's reactive, and there's nothing proactive. And you're right. It's the say no to drugs, and that's it. And there's not any substance or anything around that. And so you're not getting to the core of any of the problem, any of the root of the problem, and it's all reactive. Pee in a cup, and if it's positive, then we'll deal with it, sort of thing. And that's frustrating to listen to for me. Of how far behind we are, because this is stuff from the 80s, say no to drugs sort of thing, and we're not evolving.
Oh, and when you recognize the limitations of those programs, recently Quest Diagnostics every year does a drug testing index. It shows the state of drug testing in the workplace, covers multiple industries, predominantly urine tests, but they indicated a very high frequency of big uptick of substitute specimens, meaning people were, quote, cheating a drug test.
Yeah.
Because the repercussions are so high. People feel boxed in, right? That is there an alternate path? Max, what we didn't say in the very beginning is I worked in the commercial insurance industry for many years. So that risk management and safety, starting in the late 90s and in through the early 2000s, I was one of those leading voices for why people needed drug testing programs in the workplace. There was empirical evidence that showed organizations and projects that had drug testing had better quality and safety records. The challenge is the more we made this punitive, the more good people we lost.
Right.
And the phrase that I've used is kick good people to the curb. Finally, this many years later, we're working with owners, we're working with general contractors and construction managers to say there has to be a better way. So I started telling Dave's story with his permission, but now today we have some large contractors and large construction owners saying, how do we bring a person back to work if they've, quote, failed a drug test? Is there a pathway for them? And it would be through recovery. So we're excited about that. There's a movement afoot called Recovery Ready Workplaces. There's federal work being done through the White House. There's recovery ready initiatives underway by a certification group. You're starting to see this pop up across our society, not just the construction industry, but this is going to help pave a way for a healthier, more proactive, positive discussion around reducing discrimination in employment based on drug testing and build a healthy, holistic health workplace.
Yeah, build a foundation
based on recovery.
Yeah, a proper foundation. No doubt, no doubt. I've got Kyle Beyer, Senior Director of Safe Workplaces, Safe Projects, Stop the Addiction Fatality Epidemic. Find them online at safeproject.us. Dave Argus, Director of Operations, Karas and Karas Glass. We're talking addiction, recovery, mental health, and what can be done, and lots of really important nuggets. Dave, I'm curious. Any pushback from anybody inside your company once upon a time? I'm sure everybody now is used to it, but how was it getting going with fellow coworkers?
Well, it's funny, at the beginning, on the onset, there was no negativity at all. Until these kids started succeeding, right? Then there was, right? Because now they're actually replacing other people, when it's time to get laid off. When it's time, when work slows down, and as you know, it's a very transient business.
Yes.
So these people are hired out of the local hall. We hire carpenters, glaziers, and iron workers. So when it gets slow, certain people get laid off. And if you're in this little program that we once had, which now is more a philosophy, you don't get any preferential treatment. Actually, it's harder for you, because I tell every single kid, I'm like, listen, you be there before anyone and you leave after everyone, and while you're there, you work harder than everybody.
Right.
That has to happen. And they do. So people that maybe don't are now getting put, they're only keeping them because they're drug addicts, they're alcoholics, they're this. So yeah, so then you always have that side. But you know what, Max? I don't worry about them.
You can't. It's because you're doing the right thing. I was curious about that dynamic, because I know that human nature would be, well, if he lays, so-and-so off, he's going to backslide. So that's the only reason he's keeping him, and not because he's a good worker.
Right. But see, it's funny, because when you talk about that, like we talk to these guys all the time, and they talk to me all the time. And I think we had 19 at one point. They're all working in the industry right now. Probably 8 of them are working for me. 10 of them are with other, it's a pretty ancestral business.
Sure.
I don't care who they're working for. They all call me every Friday night, tell me they're going to do good this weekend. It's not just an employee. I say I love them. They're people. And if people can't help people, I don't care if you're in construction, if you're an accountant, none of that matters to me. I happen to be in the glass business. That's the only reason I'm here, but
Yeah.
it doesn't matter. Helping people is the thing. And these guys, you know, they say someone struggling with addiction is negatively affecting 19 people in their life, right? So turn that around. You help someone, you're helping 19 people. Now these 19 people go and help somebody. It just is such a great upside. I get so excited. I wish I was younger, because I think it's going to be, 20, 30 years. This is just going to be it's going to be so wonderful.
Yeah, no, that is true. That is true. And Cal, that makes me think about, you're talking about, you ask the crowd, if you have a family member with addiction or anything like that, when you do certain polls like that, does it surprise you the numbers that you see, both on people that have family members, but also, those that might be in recovery, those that might be doing, like Dave's saying, helping others out? Are we trending in the right direction when all is said and done?
Max, I think what we're trending in is an honesty. More people are responding at a higher rate. And I believe it's just honesty that people are recognizing. Only if we talk about this are we going to make progress.
Yeah.
People are recognizing that they need to be honest and evaluate their own life, evaluate those of the family, and then think about coworkers. So what's interesting, we ask the question, do you have experience with addiction or substance use disorder? Yes, for myself. Yes, for my birth, immediate, or extended family. Yes, for neighbors, friends. Yes, for coworkers. The area that we're still seeing the lowest response is yes with coworkers. And Dave, you had a very insightful from the podium comment. Hey, we see it in our families, we see it in ourselves, but we're missing it at the workplace. If you remember saying that.
Yeah, well,
And I loved it because Dave jumped on that. We do need then to offer that helping hand, like your friends from the IUPAT talked about their program called
Yeah.
Helping Hands. It's how we let people know they're not alone and that we're there to be an ally and how to be a support for them.
Yeah. And Dave, go ahead. I know you want to jump in.
no, it's like, this thing it's just crazy how things, when you get it, when I got into this, then I meet all these great people that are doing things every day for others, not themselves. It's just a great, it makes your head start thinking, right? So now I'm in the whole suicide prevention thing. Don't know a thing about it, but Jesus, someone tell me what to do and I'll go do it. So what that brought to me was, we're big into safety at Caras and Caras.
Mhm.
But everything's still physical safety, Max. It's tying off. It's
Not mental. Yeah, right.
Not mental, right?
Right.
So I'm thinking, I'm like, I don't know how Cal and those guys look at the suicide thing. I don't understand it. Now I'm talking to all the guys about it, right? And the guys in recovery, like they'll check in before we're on the leading edge of the building, as you know, right?
Mhm.
We're one fall away from going down 20 floors. So they kind of, I'm talking to them out loud, guys, what about checking in mentally? How do we do that? Oh, Mr. August, we do that. We do that. But before we'll notice, like it almost, and I don't know if this is just me liking these people with addictions, but they almost have a sense when someone's not right.
Yeah.
So they ask, hey, what's up? Everything all right? And a lot of times that's all it takes, Max, right? It's simple, but a lot of people don't ask, how you doing? And want to listen for an answer.
Yeah. Yeah. And no doubt. And a couple more questions for you guys. And that just got me thinking. And Cal, since you have a background also in insurance, mental safety does not come into play very often when you are going through your safety, measures. And I also don't know how much the insurance companies push the mental side of things, maybe because they're afraid, or am I missing that? Are we still, to me, I feel like we're short on the way the insurance companies, and if you have an insurance provider, offers benefits on the mental side versus the physical side.
hard is with respect to insurance. We've got workers' comp and employee benefits.
Right.
So it's different groups, it's different audiences. Very few of those leaders in each field are doing both, right? So that fragmentation is hard. What I would say is we as an industry have been bringing this idea of worker well-being to the forefront. So the combination of physical wellness and emotional well-being, that is changing. And that's been industry-led through associations, through the partnership with labor organizations. I'm excited to see progress being made. Every year there's been a little more adoption. It's growing organically. So that's a positive. The insurance industry probably historically was concerned about the effects of trauma and compensability of stress with respect to workers' comp statutes. If more than 50 different jurisdictional rules, so it's hard to have one standard, one set of rules to play by. In some states, different things were going to be compensable. So without going into too much detail, these were things that impacted the business. It was their productivity, their quality, their risk management, their safety, their construction schedules, the sequence of work being done. A lot of those were going to be uninsured anyway, because those were operational risks.
Gotcha.
So we talk about human capital risk management. I've got a lot of partners in a lot of insurance companies, and I'm seeing a lot of progress in these topics. And I have deep respect for what they're doing. I understood what those limitations could be. We're a very litigious society. There's
Right.
litigation and lawsuits. These are business risks. So we need to think about the direct costs and indirect costs. And it's good business practice for employers to embrace these strategies around addiction treatment and recovery, mental health and well-being, and then suicide prevention. I would say the big challenge that we see is too much dependence just on drug testing programs, drug testing policies, without the resources available. So Max, still have work to be done in those areas, starting to see some progress be made. But there is no easy button. This is
No.
going to take us time to get around. One thing that we should hopefully see benefit of is over-the-counter naloxone to help with reversal of overdoses. And we need to get the attention of employers that 9.5% of all occupational fatalities in all industries are happening on job sites. That alone is the wake-up call why naloxone in a first aid kit with proper training, proper response for an emergency is good business practice.
Yeah.
And those are the things that we need everyone to help adopt. So hoping that the insurance industry will continue to offer support, let people know there are no barriers, that this is Good Samaritan statutes exist in all but one state, and teach people about the availability of naloxone. And employers, we have to stop waiting for someone to give us a free case or box of Narcan. Sometimes we just have to make investments in safety. This is one of those. Not every state is going to have free supplies.
Right.
So we have to go right to the source, go right to the manufacturer. If you need help, reach out to a nonprofit like Safe Project. We'll help connect you. But this is about making investments in human capital risk management to save lives.
No doubt. This is very, very fascinating, interesting, important sort of stuff. And what I like about you, Cal, is that you know the insurance world, and so I think you have an appreciation and a respect for what they're doing and an understanding for what they're doing. You may not agree with it all, but you understand it. I think that's why you're perfect to be the messenger on the side that you're on right now, because you can deal in some of those realities and try to change things for the better. So I think that's that's working out real well. Just a couple more questions. I'm curious, and not curious, but we're talking a lot about, I think the assumption right now is that this is all focused on the blue collar worker, but this is not just a blue collar scenario. There are white collar, there are CPAs and accountants, controllers inside the glass business, estimators, project managers who probably also fall into this this situation as well. Am I right or am I wrong there?
Podcasters.
Yeah, you name it.
Correct me if I'm wrong, Cal, but it doesn't matter what you do for a living.
The pressures are still there. I mean,
yeah.
Because I think the only difference
cuts across
yeah
every demographic of our society.
Yeah, I think that the only difference is we were talking
Addiction.
about one of the triggers was that soft tissue injury, and so if you're a project manager, you're not going to have that injury, but you have that pressure because you have estimated this job or got the estimates, and you've got to meet what has been done, and the pressure to bring that job in on time and on cost, that could lead to other things. And if you don't have somebody to talk to, I mean, I could see that being kind of the impetus there.
But again, Max, I think you're delving into how does an addict become an addict, which is a question that we probably don't know. I mean, there's a million, and it doesn't matter. There's a million different views of it. But I think the one thing that we know is, like, for instance, you're talking about drug testing. We don't ever drug test anymore. We don't even do it. Instead, we just have a conversation.
Yeah.
But it's easy to see. It doesn't matter what you do for a living. Again, most of these things could have been created from childhood traumas.
True too.
But it's easy to watch. It's not like how a guy acts. It's is he talking about his girlfriend? Is he talking about other people? Then you know that they're engaged in society. Because the drink or the drug, whatever they're addicted to, or the spending or the chocolate, it doesn't matter, the porn, it's going to break every meaningful relationship they have. So if you're talking to them and you're keeping these neurological pathways alive of me caring about you, checking in on you, if you're talking healthy about other people, I know you're good.
Yeah, worker well-being. I think that's the key.
It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter if you're the CEO. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter what you do.
I think I wanted to stress, because I didn't want people to think, okay, well, it's not my problem. It's just the guy on the job site or the gal on the job site. But it's everybody's problem. It's everybody's problem.
It's everybody's problem.
Your brother.
Yeah, absolutely. Gal.
Max, sometimes the companies that don't want to tackle it might have issues in the founding family, right? And so it becomes this unspoken, it becomes this off limits topic.
Right.
And what we're really starting to see today with more regularity are organizations saying, from a cultural standpoint, how do we de-emphasize alcohol in our company events? And those are the positive signs I see. I've been seeing associations organize industry events around recovery. So around mental health, well-being, people asking questions, is it going to be recovery friendly? That used to mean we will have non-alcoholic beverages or even mocktails.
Yeah.
Today, it means we might do an event that has no alcohol.
Right.
And so I was at a group last week in Colorado that is promoting a fundraiser for these topics that we've talked about today. They've made the decision to go alcohol free, to send the right message, to not put people in conflict. That is a topic that we're seeing much more adoption on, much more healthy dialogue. It's a good trend.
It is. All right. Well, before we wrap up, just final thoughts from each of you. Dave, I'll let you go first. Any final thoughts, comments, anything you want to preach?
No, but I think, Max, the importance of things like glass build, or the BEC, because you know what that does is we will run our talk on our thing and people can show up. Not because of that. They could always say, well, it was a glass build anyway, so of course I went in there. You know, it's not like they're going to put themselves out because they're driving to a specific place to go to a meeting.
Right.
You know, it's someone in our industry like, well, I got to be there anyways, but so I'll go to it. You know, when really they're dying to go to it. They need to go to it. I think that's an important view. And I mean, I don't really, Cal is all over the globe. So he's the one that tells me the way it is out there. I didn't know, and Cal can attest. I thought, because in New England, in where I am, we're a lot better off than we were 3 years ago, a lot better off.
Yeah.
And it's almost something to be, you know, being in the addiction world is more of a fraternity than something to hide, because people are getting jobs because of it, you know. So I didn't really realize till Cal told me, Dave, it's not like that everywhere, you know. So I kind of go off I didn't want to be redundant, and he was like, no, keeps the same message, keep the same message, and
keep pounding away at this. Cal, your final thoughts.
No, Max, Dave and I respected you so much as a moderator for our event. And before we left the podium that day, you asked if we would come be part of your podcast. So we knew you're in this industry. You're so well respected. Melanie had told us who you were. That was one sign that we had. But the next sign is we had, before we left Nashville with BEC, they'd asked us to block our calendar to come back to Glass Build.
Yeah.
And the focus that Melanie, Katie, and Sarah have is to make this actionable.
Yeah.
So we've done the high level. Now, what tools, what resources can we put in the hands of business leaders? So we're just starting that dialogue to be prepared for October 1st. So what we want to do is invite people. If there are resources you need, let Max know so he can communicate to us. If you know Katie Devlin or Melanie Detmer or Sarah Niswinger, please let them know what type of resources you're looking for. We want to bring toolkit with toolbox talks and a no shame pledge that we use. We want to think about things like hard hat stickers and naloxone information and where do you order naloxone to just make this doable. So when you leave Dallas, you can identify 3 to 5 next steps and be ready to help be part of this army of helpers. So that's what Dave and I are really hoping that people will use Glass Build America for this year.
We're going to push it. We're going to push it hard. This was very, very helpful to me personally. I think it's going to be very, very helpful to the industry professionally. And I appreciate you guys taking the time. Cal Beyer, Senior Director, Safe Workplace. See him online, see his company online, safeproject.us. There's resources on there. It's a very good site. You want to check that out. And David Argus, the Director of Operations at Karas and Karas Glass in New England. Again, you guys are incredible humans, genuine to the core, and I'm very, very thankful for you taking the time, and look forward to seeing you in October in Dallas.
Grateful.
absolutely.
Look forward to seeing you too, Max.
Thank you so much, Max.
Thanks, guys. Okay. That wraps things up for this month on the From the Fabricator podcast. This was something, and it's a learning experience. It'll be something to continue to go to as we learn and we can love. And as Dave and Cal both said, it's not easy. It's not easy, but it's something we have to do. And I think this is an ongoing process. So I thank Cal and Dave for their time. Really, really important stuff learned here today. Thank you so much for listening to or watching the From the Fabricator podcast. I appreciate it. I'll be back next month. Got a couple really interesting guests lined up, maybe even a third. Looking forward to it. We've got a great schedule the rest of the year. I can't wait. Again, I thank FHC for their support. Reminder, you can save big on glass and glazing essentials from them. The month of June, customers can save up to 25% on the most popular abrasive belts, sanding discs, and glass cleaners. Now's the time to stock up on those glazier essentials, folks. All products are in stock and ready to ship or be picked up. FHC-USA.com. That's FHC-USA.com. Thank you to them for their support. You now have a choice, and I thank them for making the choice in me. All right, we will see you guys next month. We'll catch up on everything, including TV, some new guests, the whole thing. And once again, appreciate your support. Have a good one, everybody.
Oh, the music is stopped.